The air in the old church hung heavy, thick with the scent of aged wood and melting wax. Flickering candlelight danced across the stone walls, casting shadows that twisted like ghosts in the dimness. I stood before the altar, my hands clutching, a bouquet of white roses so tightly my fingers ached, the thorns pricking through the satin ribbon. The white wedding gown clung to me, stiff and unyielding, a shroud I hadn't chosen. At 25, I, Elena Hart, was a virgin. Not by some grand romantic ideal, but because I'd never let anyone close enough to claim me. And now, here I was, sold like a prized mare to a man I didn't know, all to save my family from ruin. The organ groaned a somber hymn, its notes echoing off the vaulted ceiling as if mourning the life I was leaving behind. My father, a broken man with a crumbling empire, had brokered this deal. My hand for his salvation. Across from me stood Damien Voss, 32, a billionaire carved from ice and shadow. His dark suit was impeccable, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass, and his eyes, deep, unreadable pools, fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. He stepped forward, the priest's voice a dull hum in my ears, and slipped a cold gold band onto my finger. "You are mine forever," he whispered, his voice low and steady, a vow that felt more like a sentence. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I stood there, my face a mask of indifference, while my heart pounded a furious rhythm against my ribs. I've never loved. I've never belonged to anyone. And now I'm a possession in the hands of a stranger. The thought clawed at me, sharp and relentless. I glanced toward the back of the church, where my mother, Clara, lingered near a pew. Her eyes were red, glistening with unshed tears, but she said nothing. She just watched, a silent witness to my sacrifice. What was she hiding behind that pained stare? I couldn't ask. Not now. Not here. The ceremony ended in a blur of murmured blessings and hollow applause from the handful of guests. Business associates, not friends. Damien's hand brushed my elbow, guiding me down the aisle with a touch that was firm yet distant. In the cramped vestry, I shed the gown, my fingers fumbling with the clasps. The fabric slid off my shoulders, pooling on the floor like a discarded skin, and I stood there in a simple slip, feeling the chill of the room seep into my bones. It wasn't freedom. It was just another layer of captivity peeling away. I caught my reflection in a cracked mirror. Pale, resolute, a woman determined not to break. He won't own me, I promised myself, the words a lifeline in the storm of my thoughts. Outside, the night swallowed us whole. Damien's black limo waited like a sleek predator, its engine purring softly in the dark. He opened the door, and I slid onto the leather seat, the cold biting through my thin coat. He settled, beside me, his presence a wall of silence, and the car pulled away from the church. I stared out the tinted window, watching the city lights streak past, blurred, fleeting, like the life I'd known slipping through my fingers. My breath fogged the glass, a small rebellion against the sterile luxury surrounding me. I've never been touched, never been claimed. Why does it feel like I've lost everything already? The drive was wordless, the tension between us a living thing. I stole a glance at him, his profile sharp against the dim glow of the dashboard, his hands resting calmly on his knees. What kind of man buys a bride? What kind of man brands her with words like, forever? I didn't know him, didn't want to. But those eyes, they'd locked onto me in the church with a hunger I couldn't decipher. A promise I didn't trust. My fingers tightened around the edge of my coat, nails digging into the fabric. I won't let him control me. I won't. The limo slowed as we approached his estate, a sprawling fortress of stone and glass that loomed against the night sky. Iron gates swung open, and we glided up a winding drive lined with skeletal trees, their branches clawing at the stars. The car stopped, and Damien stepped out, offering me a hand I refused to take. I climbed out on my own, the gravel crunching under my heels, and followed him through towering double doors into a world of opulence that felt like a gilded cage. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and crimson velvet curtains framed windows that stared blankly into the dark. He led me up a grand staircase, his footsteps silent, mine echoing like a prisoner's march. At the top, he opened a door to a bedroom that could have swallowed my old apartment whole. A 4-poster bed draped in silk dominated the space, its richness mocking my emptiness. "This is yours," he said, his voice flat, devoid of warmth. He didn't linger, didn't explain, just turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood there, alone, the silence pressing in. My gaze fell to the ring on my finger, its weight a constant reminder of the bargain I'd been forced into. I crossed to the window, pushing aside the heavy curtains. Beyond the glass, the estate stretched into shadows, vast and unknowable, just like the man who'd brought me here. My breath caught as I traced the cold metal of the ring with my thumb. This isn't my life. This isn't me. But it was now, whether I liked it or not. I thought of my mother again, her tearful eyes haunting me. Why hadn't she fought for me? What secret kept her silent? Turning from the window, I sank onto the edge of the bed, the silk cool against my skin. My resolve hardened, a spark igniting in the ashes of my fear. Damien Voss might have bought me, but he'll never own me. I'll find a way out of this, whatever it takes. The night stretched ahead, endless and uncertain, but I clung to that promise. It was all I had left. The bedroom felt like a mausoleum, its silence broken only by the faint crackle of the fireplace. Crimson velvet curtains smothered the moonlight, leaving the room bathed in a warm, deceptive glow. I sat on the edge of the silk-draped bed, still in my slip, the ring on my finger a cold weight I couldn't ignore. My first night as Damien, Voss's wife, a title I despised, and I was alone, abandoned by the man who'd claimed me hours ago in that frigid church. The thought gnawed at me. What kind of husband walks away from his bride? What kind of prison have I walked into? The door creaked open and my breath caught. Damien stepped inside, his tall frame filling the space with an authority that made the air feel thinner. He'd shed his suit jacket, the white shirt beneath rolled up at the sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd run his hands through it. But those eyes, sharp, unyielding, locked onto me like a predator sizing up its prey. I stood, my bare feet sinking into the plush rug, and squared my shoulders. He won't see me falter. "Sit," he said, his voice low and commanding, a thread of something unreadable woven through it. I didn't move. His lips twitched, not quite a smile, and he crossed to a small table by the fireplace. From a velvet-lined box, he withdrew a slender silver dagger, its blade glinting in the firelight. My pulse quickened, a cold sweat prickling. My spine. Is this it? Is this where he shows his true colors? But he didn't advance with menace. Instead, he held out his other hand, palm up. "Give me your wrist, Elena." "No," I snapped, stepping back. "What are you doing?" My voice trembled, betraying the fear I'd sworn to bury. He didn't answer, just watched me with that unnerving calm, the dagger resting lightly in his grip. The room seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in as I weighed my options. Run? Fight? There was no escape. Not yet. Reluctantly, I extended my left arm, the one with his ring, and glared at him. If he hurts me, I'll make him regret it. He took my wrist, his touch firm but not cruel, and pulled me closer to the mirror above the mantel. The glass reflected us, me, pale and defiant, him, a shadowed enigma. He raised the dagger and I stiffened, but he didn't cut me. With a steady hand, he pressed the flat of the blade against my skin, just below the ring. Heat seared through me, not enough to burn, but enough to mark. When he pulled it away, a faint outline remained. A small rose, etched in red against my flesh. "This is my mark on you," he said, his voice a quiet thunder. "You're mine, forever." I yanked my arm back, cradling it against my chest. The sting faded, but the weight of his words lingered, heavy as chains. "You think this makes me yours?" I spat, my anger flaring hot and bright. "A scar doesn't change who I am." He didn't flinch, just set the dagger back in its box and met my gaze. "It's not about changing you," he said. "It's about claiming what's already done." Then he turned and left, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed in my bones. I stood there, trembling, staring at the mark in the mirror. It wasn't deep, wouldn't scar forever, but it felt like a brand, a declaration I couldn't erase. He thinks he owns me. He's wrong. My hand shook as I stumbled to the kitchen down the hall, a sterile expanse of marble and steel. I needed something normal, something mine. I filled a kettle, the clink of metal grounding me, and set it on the stove. As the water hissed, I traced the rose with my fingertip, the skin still tender. Why didn't he stay? Why mark me and walk away? The kettle whistled, and I poured the steaming water into a mug, the scent of chamomile rising like a fragile comfort. I gripped the cup, letting its warmth seep into my palms, and sank onto a stool. My mind raced, replaying his words, his touch. I've never let anyone close. Now he's carved himself into me without even asking. The tea burned my tongue, a sharp reminder of the world I still controlled. But then I heard it, a muffled voice from beyond the kitchen wall. I crept closer, pressing my ear to the cool plaster. Damien's voice, low and clipped, filtered through. "She can't know the truth about her mother. Not yet." My heart stuttered. My mother? What does he know about Clara? The line went silent, and I pulled back, the mug nearly slipping from my hands. Secrets piled on secrets, and I was trapped in the middle, a pawn in a game I didn't understand. Back in the bedroom, I set the tea on the nightstand and stared at the mark again, its faint red lines glowing in the lamplight. He's hiding something big. The realization fueled me, a spark of defiance igniting in my chest. I didn't know what he wanted, what he feared. But I'd find out. He might have marked me, but I'm not his. Not yet. Not ever. I slid under the covers, the silk cool against my skin, and closed my eyes. Sleep wouldn't come easy, not with his shadow looming over me, but I clung to one truth. I'll escape this. Whatever it takes. The fire dwindled to embers, and the room grew still. But inside me, a storm brewed. One he'd ignited with that blade, that whisper. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew this. Damien Voss had underestimated me, and that would be his first mistake. The morning light barely pierced the heavy curtains of Damien's mansion, leaving the bedroom steeped in a gray half-gloom. I woke with the mark on my wrist throbbing faintly, a reminder of the night before, of the silver dagger of his voice claiming me. The silk sheets clung to my skin as I slid out of bed, my bare feet meeting the cold hardwood floor. I couldn't stay here, trapped in this room like some caged bird. He thinks he's branded me, but I'm not his to keep. The thought fueled me, a quiet fire flickering beneath my exhaustion. I pulled on a robe, soft, expensive, another piece of this gilded prison, and stepped into the hallway. It stretched endlessly before me, a tunnel of shadows lined with closed doors, their brass handles glinting like watchful eyes. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and something fainter, musty, like secrets locked away too long. I moved silently, my fingers brushing the walls, feeling the texture of wealth I didn't belong to. This isn't a home. It's a fortress, and I was determined to find its cracks. Downstairs, the kitchen gleamed sterile and untouched, a stark contrast to the chaos in my head. I needed something normal, something to anchor me. My phone sat on the counter, a lifeline to the world I'd left behind. I dialed my mother, Clara, the call connecting after a single ring. "Elena?" Her voice trembled, fragile as cracked glass. "Are you okay?" "Am I okay?" I echoed, my tone sharp as I filled the kettle again. "You stood there yesterday, Mom, watching me get sold off. Why didn't you stop it?" The water hissed as it heated, mirroring the anger bubbling inside me. Her silence stretched, heavy with guilt. "Don't hate me," she finally whispered. I had no choice. Her words broke off into a sob, and I gripped the counter, my knuckles whitening. No choice? What does that even mean? "Tell me why," I pressed, pouring the boiling water into a mug. The steam rose, curling around my face like a veil. "What are you hiding?" But she only murmured, "I'm sorry," before the line went dead. I stared at the phone, the tea forgotten, my chest tight with questions. She's keeping something, from me. And Damien knows it. The mark on my wrist itched, a silent taunt. I had to find answers, here, in this labyrinth of his. I wandered back to the hallway, my mug in hand, the warmth a small comfort against the chill. The doors loomed, each one a mystery, and I stopped at one near the end, its frame slightly worn, as if used more than the others. A library, maybe. I turned the handle, locked. My pulse quickened. What's he hiding? I pressed my ear to the wood, straining for any sound, but the house was a tomb, silent except for my own breathing. I needed to know. I needed control. Footsteps echoed behind me, deliberate and unhurried. I spun around, tea sloshing over the rim, to find Damien standing there, his dark eyes narrowing. He'd traded his shirt for a black sweater, the kind that hugged his frame and made him look both dangerous and untouchable. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that sent a shiver down my spine. "Exploring," I shot, back, lifting my chin. "Or am I a prisoner here too?" His gaze flicked to the locked door, then back to me, a flicker of something, anger, fear, crossing his face. "Don't touch what isn't yours," he said, stepping closer. The space between us shrank, and I could smell him, cedar, smoke, a hint of something sharp. My heart pounded, but I didn't retreat. "I'm not yours," I said, my words a blade aimed at his calm. "You don't get to decide what I touch, what I know." I held up my wrist, the faint rose mark glowing in the dim light. "This doesn't mean anything." His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he'd snap, grab me, silence me. But he didn't. He just stared, his eyes boring into mine, searching for something I wouldn't give. "You don't understand," he said finally, his voice softer, almost pained. "Not yet." He turned away, but I stepped forward, my anger spilling over. "Then make me understand. What's behind that door? What do you know about my mother?" He froze, his shoulders stiffening, and I knew I'd struck a nerve. But he didn't answer, just walked away, his footsteps fading into the shadows. I stood there, trembling, the mug cold in my hands. He's hiding something big, something about her. My mother's tears, her cryptic words, they tangled with Damien's silence, a web I couldn't untangle yet. I set the mug on a nearby table, my resolve hardening. "I'll find out. I'll break this place open if I have to." The hallway stretched before me, a gauntlet of secrets, and I knew I'd walk it, door by door, lock by lock, until I had the truth. I glanced back at the locked door, its worn frame whispering promises of answers. My fingers brushed the mark, on my wrist, no longer just a symbol of his claim, but a challenge. He thinks he's trapped me here. He's wrong. I'd spent my life guarding myself, keeping everyone at arm's length. Now, that strength would be my weapon. Damien Voss might rule this house, but he wouldn't rule me. The day stretched ahead, vast and uncertain, but I felt a shift inside, a spark of defiance growing into a flame. I'd find the key to that door, to his secrets, to my mother's silence. And when I did, I'd be the one in control. For the first time since the church, I felt something like hope, fragile but fierce, burning through the cold. Sleep eluded me that night, the mansion's silence pressing against my ears like a weight. The mark on my wrist pulsed faintly, a ghost of Damien's touch. And every creak of the old house jolted me awake. By midnight, I couldn't bear the stillness any longer. I slipped from the bed, the silk sheets whispering against my skin, and pulled on the robe again. The hallway loomed, beyond my door, dark and endless, but I wasn't searching for locked secrets this time. I just needed to move, to breathe, to feel something other than the cage closing in. My bare feet padded down the grand staircase, the marble cold and unforgiving beneath me. The chandelier above cast faint prisms of light, like stars trapped in glass, but they offered no warmth. I wandered into the vast living room, a cavern of luxury I hadn't explored yet. Plush velvet sofas flanked a massive fireplace, its embers long dead, and at the far end stood an old upright piano, its wood chipped and faded. It looked out of place, a relic in this polished world, and I paused, drawn to its quiet imperfection. Then I heard it, a soft, mournful note, trembling through the air. My breath caught as I edged closer, peering around a column. There he was, Damien, seated at the piano, his broad shoulders hunched, his fingers coaxing a melody from the keys. The black sweater clung to him, and the dim glow of a single lamp painted his face in shadows. He didn't know I was there, didn't see me watching, and for the first time he looked human, vulnerable. His hands moved with a tenderness I hadn't imagined possible, each note a sigh, a wound laid bare. What is this? Who is he beneath the mask? The music swelled, a haunting tune that twisted something deep inside me. I should have turned away, should have kept my distance, but my feet betrayed me. I stepped forward, the floor creaking under my weight, and his hands stilled. He looked up, his dark eyes meeting mine, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The air crackled, thick with unspoken things. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice rough, almost broken. "And you shouldn't be playing like that," I replied, my words sharper than I intended. "Not if you want me to keep hating you." It was a confession I hadn't meant to make, and his gaze softened, just for a heartbeat, before hardening again. He stood, the piano bench scraping against the floor, and I braced myself for his anger. But he didn't lash out. Instead, he spoke, low and raw. "My mother used to play this. It's the only thing I have left of her." The words hit me like a punch, cracking the wall I'd built between us, his mother. The same woman tied to my own, to the secrets he wouldn't share. I wanted to demand answers, to tear into him. But something in his voice, the ache, the loss, held me back. Before I could stop myself, I crossed the room and placed a hand on his shoulder. His sweater was warm under my palm, his frame solid yet trembling faintly. What am I doing? My mind screamed to pull away, but my heart, traitor that it was, kept me there. He turned his head, his breath brushing my wrist where the rose mark lingered. "You don't have to hate me, Elena," he said, so quietly I almost missed it. His hand rose, fingers closing around mine, and he pressed them against the mark, a touch both gentle and possessive. "You're the light I don't deserve." The words hung between us, fragile and heavy, and my chest tightened. Light? Me? I'd spent my life guarding myself, keeping everyone out. How could he see anything in me worth that? I yanked my hand back, the spell shattering. "Don't," I snapped, stepping away. "Don't pretend this is anything but what it is. A transaction." My voice shook, betraying the storm inside me. I turned and fled, my robe fluttering behind me as I raced up the stairs. Back in my room, I slammed the door and leaned against it, my breath ragged. What just happened? My hand still tingled where he'd touched it, and my heart pounded a rhythm I didn't recognize. I stumbled to the nightstand, fumbling for the kettle I'd brought up earlier. The water was cold now, but I heated it anyway, needing the ritual to steady me. As the steam rose, I poured it into a mug, the chamomile scent a faint echo of calm. I gripped the cup, staring at the mark on my wrist, its red lines stark against my skin. He's not what I thought. But that doesn't change anything. Or did it? The music replayed in my mind, soft and sad, a window into a man I didn't want to understand. I sank onto the bed, the tea warming my hands but not my soul. Why did he look so broken? Why did I care? I'd come here a prisoner, determined to escape. But that moment, his fingers on the keys, his voice cracking, had shifted something. I didn't want to feel it, didn't want to see him as anything but the enemy. Yet there it was, a flicker of doubt, a question I couldn't shake. What if he's trapped too? The night stretched on, the mansion silent once more. I sipped the tea, its bitterness grounding me, and stared at the ceiling. He's hiding something, about his mother, about mine. That much I knew. But now, I wondered if the truth wasn't just a key to my freedom, but to his. I pushed the thought away, burying it deep. I won't let him in. I can't. But as I closed my eyes, the melody lingered, a quiet thread pulling me toward a man I swore I'd never trust. The mansion felt alive that morning, its walls humming with a tension I couldn't name. I'd barely slept, haunted by the echo of Damien's piano, his words, "You're the light I don't deserve," looping through my mind like a melody I couldn't shake. The mark on my wrist itched, a constant reminder of the man who'd branded me, and the questions he'd left unanswered. What does he know about my mother? What's he hiding behind those locked doors? I couldn't sit still, couldn't let the doubt fester. I needed the truth, and I'd tear this place apart to find it. I slipped into a pair of jeans and a sweater from the wardrobe. Simple, practical. A rebellion against the silk and velvet of this gilded cage. The hallway greeted me with its familiar shadows, the locked door at the end calling like a siren. I'd seen Damien leave earlier, his car disappearing down the drive, and I knew this was my chance. My fingers brushed the brass handle, cold and unyielding, but I wasn't empty-handed. Last night, I'd spotted a keyring in his coat pocket when he'd hung it by the stairs. A reckless hope, but all I had. I darted downstairs, my heart pounding, and rifled through the coat. The keys jangled softly, a small silver one catching my eye. This has to be it. Back at the door, I slid the key into the lock, my breath hitching as it turned with a satisfying click. The door swung open, revealing a narrow room that smelled of dust and old paper. A library, but not like any I'd seen. Shelves lined the walls, stuffed with leather-bound books. But it was the far end that stopped me cold. A mirror, tall and ornate, flanked by sketches pinned haphazardly to the wood. I stepped closer, my sneakers silent on the worn rug, and my stomach dropped. The sketches were of me. Dozens of them. Some from years ago. My face younger, softer, captured in pencil and ink. Me at 16, reading in a park. Me at 20, walking through the city. He's been watching me. For how long? My hands trembled. As I reached for a folded letter tucked beneath the mirror, its edges yellowed with age. The handwriting was elegant, feminine. Damien, protect Elena. She's our last hope. Her mother saved me, and now it's your turn. It was signed Lillian Voss, his mother. The room spun, and I gripped the letter tighter, my nails digging into the paper. Clara saved Lillian? From what? My mind raced back to my mother's tears, her cryptic apologies. Before I could process it, footsteps thundered behind me. I turned, the letter slipping from my fingers, as Damien burst through the doorway, his face a storm of fury. "What are you doing?" he roared, his voice shaking the air. "You have no right." "No, right?" I fired back, my voice rising to match his. "You've been stalking me for years, drawing me like some obsession, and I have no right? Tell me what this means." I jabbed a finger at the sketches, my chest heaving. He advanced, his eyes blazing, and snatched the letter from the floor. "Get out," he growled, but I stood my ground, my fear swallowed by rage. "Not until you explain," I said, stepping closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. "What did my mother do? What's this hope your mother wrote about?" His jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists, and for a moment I thought he'd push me away. But then he spoke, his voice low and jagged, like it hurt to let the words out. "Your mother saved mine from Victor Kane. He wanted us dead. Our family. Our company. Lillian begged Clara to hide her, and she did. Victor's been hunting you, ever since. Because you're her daughter." The world tilted. Victor Kane. A name I didn't know, but it carried a weight that crushed me. "Hunting me?" I whispered, my hands shaking now, not with anger but with dread. "Why didn't she tell me?" Damien's gaze softened, just a fraction, and he stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "Clara wanted you safe. I promised my mother I'd keep you that way. That's why you're here." I stared at him, the sketches blurring in my periphery. A promise, a debt. Not a transaction, not a possession, but a shield. My legs felt weak, and I sank against the mirror, its cool surface grounding me. "So I'm what? A pawn in your redemption?" My voice cracked, betraying the storm inside. "You marked me, locked me up, all for some old vow?" He didn't answer, just watched me, his silence louder than any confession. I grabbed the letter from his hand, my fingers brushing his, and stormed past him. "Elena," he started, but I didn't stop. I ran to my room, slamming the door, and sank onto the bed, the paper crumpling in my grip. My mother saved his. Victor Kane wants me dead. The words spun, a tornado of truth I couldn't escape. I'd thought Damien was my captor, but now, is he my protector, or just another liar? My eyes fell to the mark on my wrist, its faint red lines a mocking echo of the sketches. I'd wanted answers, and now I had them. Sharp, jagged pieces that didn't fit together yet. Who am I to him? A duty? A ghost of his mother's past? The room felt smaller, the walls closing in, and I pressed the letter to my chest, my breath ragged. I'm not a pawn. I'm not his hope. But as I sat there, alone with the weight of it all, a new resolve took root. I'll find out what this means, for me, for Clara, for us. And no one, not Damien, not Victor, would stop me. The truth clung to me like damp air, heavy and inescapable. I sat on the bed, the crumpled letter from Lillian Voss still in my hands, its words burning into my mind. Protect Elena. She's our last hope. My mother, Clara, had saved Damien's mother from Victor Kane, a man who now hunted me. For what? Revenge? Power? I didn't know. But the weight of it pressed against my chest, a vice I couldn't shake. The mark on my wrist stared back at me. No longer just a symbol of Damien's claim, but a thread tying me to a past I'd never known. I barely noticed the day slipping away, the light beyond the curtains fading to dusk. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a harsh intrusion, and I grabbed it, expecting Clara's name. Instead, it was a news alert. Billionaire Damien Voss weds mystery bride in secret ceremony. Who is Elena Hart? My stomach dropped. The screen glowed with grainy photos. Me in that stiff white gown, Damien's cold grip on my arm, the church's somber facade. The headlines screamed speculation. A marriage of convenience? The price of a dying empire? The world was watching now, and I was a spectacle, a pawn in their gossip. A knock rattled the door, sharp and urgent. Before I could respond, it swung open, and Clara stepped inside, her face pale, her coat dripping from the rain outside. "Elena," she said, her voice breaking as she rushed to me. "I saw the news. I had to come." She pulled me into a hug, her arms trembling, and I stiffened, the letter still clutched in my fist. "She's here. Now." The questions I'd buried surged up, hot and relentless. "Why didn't you tell me?" I pulled back, holding the letter between us like a shield. "About Lillian Voss? About Victor Kane? You let me walk into this blind." Her eyes widened, then filled with tears, and she sank onto the bed, her hands twisting in her lap. "I was afraid," she whispered. "After I hid Lillian, Victor threatened us. Your father, me, you. I thought if I kept you away from it, you'd be safe. When your father's company failed, he saw this marriage as our only way out. I didn't know how to stop it. You sold me," I said, my voice raw. "For your precious family honor." The words cut, and she flinched, but I couldn't stop. "You stood there crying while I was traded like a bargaining chip. Why, Mom?" She reached for me, but I stepped back. The distance between us a chasm I couldn't bridge. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I thought I was protecting you." Before I could respond, a shadow filled the doorway. Damien. His sweater was soaked, his hair plastered too, his forehead and his eyes flicked between us, sharp with alarm. "You shouldn't be here, Clara," he said, his tone clipped. "It's not safe." She stood, wiping her face, but I cut in. "Safe? From what? The press? Or Victor Kane?" His gaze snapped to me, and I saw it. The flicker of dread he couldn't hide. The tension shattered as a new voice sliced through the room, cold and mocking. From me, perhaps? A man stepped past Damien, tall and lean, his gray suit pristine despite the storm outside. His face was angular, his smile a blade, and his eyes locked onto me with a predator's focus. "Victor Kane," Damien growled, positioning himself between us. "Get out." "Not yet," Victor said, his tone silky. "I've waited years for this, Voss. You took everything. My deal, my future. When your mother ran. Now I'll take it back." He nodded toward me. "Starting with her." My blood ran cold, and Clara gasped, clutching my arm. Damien's fists clenched, his voice a low snarl. "Touch her, and you're dead." Victor laughed, a sound that chilled me to the bone. "The press is just the beginning. I'll ruin you, both of you, unless you hand her over. Think about it." He turned to leave, but Damien lunged, grabbing his arm. A scuffle broke out, quick and brutal, and Victor's elbow caught Damien's jaw, sending him staggering back. Blood trickled from his lip, staining his sweater, and Victor slipped out, his laughter echoing down the hall. I rushed to Damien, my hands shaking as I grabbed a towel from the bathroom. "Sit," I said, pressing it to his face. He winced but obeyed, his breath ragged. The blood soaked through the cloth, warm against my fingers, and I knelt beside him, my anger warring with something softer. He fought for me. Clara hovered nearby, her sobs quieting, and I looked at her, then back at him. "Is this what you meant by protection?" I asked, my voice trembling. He met my eyes, the fire in them dimming. "I didn't want this," he said, his words thick with pain. "Not the press, not him. I just wanted you safe." I pressed the towel harder, my hands steadying as I wiped the blood away. Safe. The word felt hollow after Victor's threat, after the cameras, after my mother's lies. But here I was, tending to him, my heart a tangled mess. Clara sank beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "I was wrong, Elena," she whispered. "I should have told you." I didn't respond, my focus on Damien's bruised face, the warmth of his skin beneath my touch. Victor's words rang in my ears. "I'll ruin you." I couldn't run now, couldn't leave them to face this alone. What am I doing? I didn't know if I was saving him or myself. But as I held the towel, a quiet resolve took root. I won't let Victor win. Damien's hand brushed mine, a fleeting touch, and he closed his eyes. "Thank you," he murmured. I didn't answer, just kept the pressure on, the blood staining my fingers a testament to the fight ahead. The storm came without warning, a roar of wind and rain that battered the mansion like a living thing. I stood by the window, watching the world dissolve into sheets of gray, the glass trembling under the onslaught. Damien's blood still stained my hands from earlier, a faint smear I hadn't washed away, and Clara sat silently on the bed behind me, her presence a fragile anchor. Victor Kane's threat hung over us. "I'll ruin you," and the air crackled with a dread I couldn't shake. He's coming. I know it. The press, the secrets, the mark on my wrist. It all led to this. A reckoning I wasn't ready for. A crash shattered the silence, glass exploding somewhere downstairs. I spun around, my heart lurching as Damien burst into the room, his face taut with urgency. "Get back!" he shouted, shoving Clara and me toward the closet. Before I could protest, gunfire erupted, sharp and deafening, splintering the walls. Victor's men, shadows in black, swarmed through the broken windows, their boots crunching on shards. Damien grabbed a lamp, swinging it like a club, and took down the first one, blood spraying across the marble floor. "Elena, stay down," he yelled, his voice cutting through the chaos. But I wouldn't hide. Victor stepped into the fray, his gray suit soaked, his smile a twisted slash. "You should have given her up, Voss," he sneered, raising a gun. Time slowed as he aimed at me, and I froze, the barrel's black eye staring me down. Then Damien lunged, shoving me aside. The shot rang out, and he staggered, blood blooming across his chest, dark and wet against his sweater. "No!" I screamed, scrambling to him as he fell. The room spun, gunfire fading into a dull roar as I knelt beside him, my hands pressing against the wound. Blood pulsed hot and fast between my fingers, soaking my sleeves, and I tore off my sweater, bunching it against his chest. "Stay with me," I pleaded, my voice breaking. His eyes fluttered, finding mine, and he rasped, "I don't expect you to love me. Just live." The words gutted me, a confession I didn't deserve. Victor laughed, stepping closer, but Clara surged forward, her frail frame a sudden storm. "Leave them," she cried, grabbing a shard of glass from the floor and slashing at him. He recoiled, blood dripping from his arm, and I seized the moment, dragging Damien toward the wall. The rain poured through the shattered windows, drenching us, and I fumbled for a towel from the closet, swapping it for the sweater, now a sodden mess. "Hold on," I whispered, my hands trembling as I pressed harder, the fabric turning crimson. Footsteps thundered. Damien's security finally arriving. Shots rang out, and Victor's men fell one by one until he stood alone, cornered. "This isn't over," he spat, then bolted into the storm, vanishing into the dark. The guards swarmed, but I barely noticed, my world narrowing to Damien's. Shallow breaths, the warmth fading from his skin. I peeled off his soaked shirt, rain mixing with blood, and wrapped him in a dry blanket from the bed, my fingers clumsy but desperate. He can't die. Not now. Clara knelt beside me, her hands shaking as she touched my shoulder. "Elena, I was wrong," she said, her voice raw. "I thought I'd lost everything when your father failed. But you're all I have. I should have fought for you." Tears streaked her face, mingling with the rain, and I looked at her, the woman who'd shaped my life with her silence. "You're here now," I said, my throat tight. "That's enough." She nodded, sobbing, and I pulled her close, her warmth a lifeline as I held Damien steady. His hand found mine, weak but insistent, and he squeezed, his eyes half open. "Thank you for staying," he murmured, blood flecking his lips. I brushed his hair back, the wet strands clinging to my fingers, and a sob broke free. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice fierce despite the tears. He fought for me. He bled for me. The man I'd hated, feared, was dying to keep me alive, and I couldn't unsee it. The sacrifice, the cost. The guards called for medics, their voices a distant hum as I focused on him, on the rise and fall of his chest, slowing but still there. I adjusted the blanket, tucking it around him, my hands steadying as I wiped the rain from his face. He's not just a promise to his mother. He's something more. The thought terrified me, but it rooted me there, kneeling in the wreckage, refusing to let go. Clara's arm tightened around me, her sobs quieting into resolve. "We'll fix this," she whispered. "Together." I nodded, my gaze locked on Damien's pale face, the blood still seeping through the towel. Together. The word felt foreign after years of walls, but it fit now, a fragile bridge between us. The storm raged on, lightning splitting the sky, but inside me, a calm settled. Not peace, not yet, but a strength I hadn't known I had. The medics arrived, their boots splashing through the puddles, and I stepped back, letting them take him. My hands were red, my clothes drenched, but I stood tall, Clara beside me. Victor's not done, but neither am I. Damien's words echoed, "Just live," and I clung to them, a vow of my own forming in the chaos. I will. For him. For us. The rain washed the blood from my skin, but the mark on my wrist remained, a silent testament to the fight we'd just begun. The storm had passed, leaving a fragile stillness in its wake. A month had slipped by since that night of blood and rain, and the mansion bore its scars, shattered windows patched with boards, walls pocked with bullet holes. Damien survived, barely, his chest stitched and bandaged, his strength returning in slow, stubborn increments. I'd stayed by his side through the hospital nights, the beeping machines a grim lullaby, and now he was back, resting in a guest room while the main wing was repaired. Victor Kane had vanished into the shadows, his threat lingering like a storm, cloud on the horizon. But for now, we had this, a moment to breathe, to mend. I stood in the old church again, the same one where this nightmare began. The air was softer now, sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, painting the stone floor in hues of gold and blue. My jeans and sweater felt out of place against the memory of that stiff white gown. But I wasn't here to relive the past. Damien stood beside me, leaning on a cane, his face still pale but his eyes sharp with purpose. Clara lingered near the pews, her coat draped over her arm, a quiet smile on her lips. This wasn't a wedding redo. It was something new, something we'd chosen. I held out my wrist, the faint rose mark catching the light. "Finish it," I said, my voice steady. Damien hesitated, his gaze searching mine, then pulled a small silver tool from his pocket, the same one he'd used that first night. He pressed it to my skin, adding a final curve to the rose, a delicate line that completed the bloom. It stung, but I didn't flinch. The mark wasn't a chain anymore. It was a bridge, a testament to what we'd survived. "It's ours now," he said, his voice low, rough with emotion. I nodded, a lump rising in my throat. Ours. We didn't exchange rings or vows, not the kind the world expected. Instead, we stood there, facing each other, the priest a silent, witness to a promise unspoken but felt. "I didn't think I'd stay," I admitted, my words echoing off the walls. "I thought I'd run the first chance I got." His lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. "I didn't think you'd care enough to save me." The honesty cut, but it healed too. A wound we'd both carried, now laid bare. Clara stepped forward, her hand brushing my arm. "You saved us both, Elena," she said, her eyes bright with tears she didn't hide. "I was so afraid of losing you that I pushed you away. But you brought me back." I turned to her, the woman who'd shaped me with her silence and her strength, and pulled her into a hug. Her coat fell to the floor, forgotten, and I felt her tremble against me. "You're my family," I whispered. "That's all that matters now." The church felt alive, its cold stones warmed by the light, by us. I'd come here a prisoner, bound by a deal I despised, but I was leaving different, stronger, tethered, not by force, but by choice. I used to think this mark was his claim on me, I thought, glancing at my wrist. Now it's mine, too. A piece of him, of Clara, of what we've built. The realization settled deep, a quiet peace I hadn't known I could feel. Damien shifted, his cane tapping the floor, and I caught his hand, steadying him. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore," I said, my voice firm. He looked at me, his eyes softening, and squeezed my fingers. "Neither do you." It wasn't love, not the fairy tale kind I'd never chased, but it was something real, forged in blood and trust. He's not just a promise to his mother. He's mine, in a way I never expected. We walked out together, the three of us, into a world washed clean by the storm. The air was crisp, the sky a endless blue, and I paused on the steps, breathing it in. Clara smiled, a real one this time, and I saw the woman she'd been before the fear, before the secrets. "What now?" she asked, her voice light with possibility. I glanced at Damien, then back at her, a spark of something new igniting inside me. "We live," I said simply. "For us." The drive back was quiet, the limo's hum a steady pulse beneath our thoughts. I sat beside Damien, his hand resting near mine, and Clara gazed out the window, her face calm. The mansion loomed ahead, no longer a fortress but a home, flawed, scarred, ours. Inside, I helped Damien to the couch, adjusting the blanket over his legs, my fingers lingering on the fabric. He caught my wrist, tracing the rose with his thumb. "Thank you," he said again, softer this time. And I smiled, a real one, not forced. Clara busied herself in the kitchen, the clink of a kettle a familiar comfort. I joined her, pouring tea into mugs, the steam curling between us. "We'll be okay," she said, her voice steady, and I believed her. The press still buzzed, Victor still lurked, but we'd faced worse. We're stronger now. I handed her a mug, our fingers brushing, and felt the weight of years lift, just a little. Back in the living room, I sat beside Damien, the tea warm in my hands. The future stretched ahead, uncertain, but not empty. Happiness isn't what I dreamed it would be, I thought, watching the sunlight spill across the floor. It's what I've chosen, with them. The mark on my wrist glowed faintly, a symbol not of captivity, but of kinship, of a family I'd fought for and found. And as I sipped my tea, the quiet held a promise. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. If you've been swept away by this journey of love, sacrifice, and redemption, don't forget to hit that like button. It means the world to me. And if you want more stories that tug at your heart and keep you on the edge of your seat, subscribe now and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Let's keep this adventure going together. See you in the next one.